Jenny. Thank you, Shubhajit, for putting that earworm in my head since this morning. I have a very nice story to tell you guys. Long, long ago, when Amit and I first met, we ran away and went off on this holiday together, all the way to Kathmandu. And over there, we saw this, we walked into this restaurant which was being run by this elderly Austrian couple, and both of them with beautiful silvery white hair, and the husband was sort of sitting there and, you know, typing away on his calculator, and the wife was writing some stuff, and amazing food, the most delicious products you can think of. It was a lot of cold cuts and things like that. And of course, Amit and I went to that restaurant almost every day that we were there in Kathmandu. And both of us were like, you know, how wonderful is this, you know, to be sort of running a restaurant together and sitting there and sort of, you know, watching people come in and eat and appreciate your food. And I think that is probably where the germs sort of got into our heads. And it was so romantic seeing these two. And as our relationship grew and progressed, both of us realized that we have a passion for food, and we always wanted to run a cafe or a little bistro or something like that, and, you know, dreams of things like going off to Tuscany or Paris or, you know, some place like that. And of course, we're sitting in Mumbai, but that dream has kind of come true. As a lot of you might know, we have finally plunged into the food business, and we have started now catering to people from our home, sharing slow fire chef recipes in reality. And the response has been absolutely overwhelming and amazing. I can't tell you, I mean, I am so grateful to all of you who've been ordering our food, and the kind of reviews you've been giving us. It really has us over the moon, and there's so much energy coming out of it, and, you know, you want to cook more, and you want to do it with love, and you want people to sort of, you know, keep licking their fingers and asking for more, like Oliver Twist. But in case you aren't aware of this and you are in Mumbai, then, and would like to be a part of the Slow Fire Chef kitchen, as we call it, you can DM us on any of the Slow Fire Chef handles. You'll find the links below almost every, not almost, below every one of our episodes on the Slow Fire Chef on YouTube. All our social media links are there. So whether it's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, it's all listed there. All you need to do is send us a DM. Don't send a public message. We don't want you to share your details, you know, in the open. So send us a private message with your name and your location, your suburb in Mumbai, and the WhatsApp telephone number that we can contact you on. And we shall then sort of send you, WhatsApp you our menu, and you can order. So let me tell you a little bit about the reviews that we've been getting. Of course, the most amazing one was from Shubhajit Day, who lives somewhere in the US, but he wanted to gift his mother a special meal for her birthday. So we cooked up this Bengali meal for her, and in return we got roses, and one of them is still surviving behind me, if you can see it. And of course, there was this whole tin of rasgullas, which is Amit's favorite. So thank you, Shubhajit. That was a lovely gesture. And I don't know if any other chefs get gestures like this. Is this normal? And then, of course, our very own dear SFC family member, Kirti Kapoor. I don't know if she's there right now. Are you there, Kirti? Anyway, you can watch this later on. Kirti Kapoor loved our food enough to write a poem. So let me read you out her poem. Two satiated beached whales want a rest, but Sir Amit is putting us to test. Feedback, says he, is a must. The emotions, the emoticons up there, he doesn't seem to trust. eyes looked at the sight while the tongue watered with all its might. A mound of rice was carefully heaped into that curry lovingly steeped. The prawn was given the seat of glory. We waited for a second to admire the story. But hungry tummies would not be denied. Their true food they had espied. Soon silence on the table reigned as conversation was by delicious food tamed. Very Alexander Popish. Many prawn malai curries have been had, but they left us wanting and kinda sad. This one was the mouth-melting kind. Into our food memories it does itself bind. Now 2 sated whales want to zzz. So please, Amit sir, allow us our buzz. Thanks we raise to the godly cook, me. This one's an absolute winner in our book. That's so beautiful. Thank you, Kirti, for this effort, and we look forward to your published book of poems soon. You have an amazing touch and a way with words, so keep writing.
Captain is here, Ash is here.
Hi, Anoop. Why don't you shift to Mumbai, Anoop, so you can eat from our kitchen? And hi, Ash. Ash, you're not in Mumbai? I thought you were in Mumbai. Anyway, so this poem, inspired by food, brings me to the topic of what we're going to be discussing tonight. It's more like a meandering, which is the romance of food, the romance which is intricately entwined with food. Romance is not just boy meets girl, they fall in love and they kiss and get married. That is not the only definition of romance. Romance is anything that awes you, inspires you, excites you. Romance has mystery, romance has beauty, romance has all sorts of things associated with it, which are, which sort of make you seek out more. So, food has been explored as, in all the art forms that we know about, right from our childhood when we learnt all those nursery rhymes, peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold, and of course there was hot cross buns, 1 a penny, 2 a penny, and then there was little Miss Muffet who sat on a tuffet and kept eating her porridge and whey. I remember that, I was like, what's wrong with Miss Muffet? How can she eat porridge and whey? But I was like, as a 4-year-old, I was like, okay, I'm going to try it one more time and wait for that spider to come and, scare me or something like that. And then, of course, sing a song of sixpence. Who doesn't remember that? 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was open, the birds began to sing. Wasn't it a lovely dish to set before the king? So, food has always been so full of romance. It has actually made people, and these are anonymous people who've written all these nursery rhymes, to actually put together, things, even something as, pedestrian as bread and honey. The queen was in the parlor eating bread and honey. Makes it sound so fantastic that you immediately want to have a piece of bread with honey. And not to forget our dear very own Chanda Mama, who's, making puris out of boor, gur, shakkar. And that's a poem that all of us as children, especially in North India, have sort of grown up with. So poetry and food, of course, as you grow older, you read more sophisticated poems, and there are, food mentioned in all of these kind of poems and stuff like that. But as children, you also have things like storybooks. So my memories, of course, go immediately to the Enid Blyton books because I was a voracious Enid Blyton reader, and also Louisa May Alcott and, a whole lot of other books like that. But Enid Blyton was a great favorite because one always wanted to have that 5 fine daughters and, 6 whatever, and one wanted to go to boarding school because of her, and one wanted to, have these mysteries and things like that. But the most impactful message, I think, that I got from Enid Blyton was the food that she would describe. And, things like those hot scones with butter dripping on them. And I want to tell you that I have still not had those scones, and I'm, please somebody feed me those scones. I mean, I don't think I'm going to UK in this life at least, but in India, if anybody is making scones, please remember me and send me a box. So, or send me the recipe, I'll make it. And Enid Blyton's jugs of creamy milk and the picnics that those children would go on with their apple and their hard boiled eggs. I mean, I was never an egg eater, but I fell in love with hard boiled eggs just reading about it over there. And of course, those chocolate sponge cakes filled with cream and ginger beer and lemonade. And it was all so exciting. I mean, all these children who had a life of their own, and they were constantly eating all this seemingly delicious, yummy food, and that made you want to also live that life. You wanted to also go out there, and we did it a lot of times. We used to actually, in those days, of course, there were places available to go off on picnics as children. So we had in Delhi, there were all these little hilly areas and stuff, and we would go away and we would pick those ber and eat them. And we were, of course, either the 5 find-outers or the 4 whatever or the 6 whatever, depending how many people there were in the group at that time. So, I mean,
Kirti has just joined us.
Hi Kirti, you missed me reading the poem. Thank you so much for it. It was really a wonderful piece of writing, and I look forward to reading more of your writing. Amit tells me you run a blog as well, so I'm going to check in there and see what else you've written. So with Enid Blyton, of course, tea took on a new meaning, and I was always asking my mother to, can I have some tea? And she thought I was asking for chai, but I was actually asking for that tea meal, which was all these sandwiches and cold tongue and ham and all sorts of things like that. I'm not even going into the Ramayana or the Mahabharata or any of the classic English literature like Proust and people like that, or Philip Roth and all these guys who have used food as a tool to express their various emotions and stuff like that. I mean, the classics are just full of allusions and allegories which are all food related. And of course, the holy books all talk about food, and they talk about food from a nutrition point, and depending which part of the world that religion is coming out of, or that religious book is coming out of, the foods differ, geographic reasons, things like that. And as somebody said, we are what we eat, but if you think of it the other way around. How have these arts that have talked about food, how have they influenced our desires? What have we craved for after reading books or seeing movies or poems or anything of that sort? I mean, I think the most classic example of this is the Archie comics. I remember in the 60s, 70s, Archie comics were a craze, and we all grew up as 10 to teens, on those Archie comics, and we wanted to eat that pizza, and we wanted the burgers, and we wanted those ice cream sundaes, and we wanted to go to pop dates and have fun like that, be those kids. And by the 80s, I think, is when 70s is when Nerulas started off in Delhi, and it was a craze. I mean, the Nerulas fast food joint in Delhi used to be every young person's, every teenager's go-to place. People would just walk in there and hang out and have those pizzas and have those burgers and, live that sort of dream that, they were Americans or whatever, or they were Archie, Betty, Reggie, Jughead, and, all those people. And I think those comics really sort of paved the way for these fast food joints coming into India. Now, of course, as grown-ups, we sort of disapprove of them because we realize that it is junk food and not something that should be consumed. But that is how it worked, and that is how it actually works. For instance, food in cinema. I mean, all movies have food. At least most movies have food scenes in them. And two of my favorite scenes are both from the Godfather films. One is from the first Godfather, where what's his name, Al Pacino, is sort of learning how to make meat sauce. And I actually, that's how I make my meat sauce. I follow that recipe. So this guy is just using tomatoes and garlic, and then he puts the sausage in, and I just love that meat sauce. And I sort of stuck to that recipe whenever I do meat sauce. Amit, of course, uses onions in his, but I like mine with only garlic and tomatoes. And then that really sexy scene in Godfather 3 where they're rolling out that gnocchi, and oh, that was fantastic. And it actually, I mean, when I watched that, I was like, okay, if these actors can do it, I mean, okay, fine, they're Italians, so they've probably practiced it in their kitchens or whatever. But I was like, if they can do it, then why can't I make pasta at home? And we actually did do it, and it comes out yummy. Remind me to share an episode. We'll do an episode on how to make pasta at home in the near future. And then, of course, there are these really irritating scenes in a lot of these American films where nothing romantic about them at all, where they're always wasting their food. I mean, they sort of, pour out their breakfast cereal, pour in the milk and the orange juice and everything. And within like 30 seconds flat, they're up and out of that house, and all that breakfast is either put into the trash bin or just dumped into the sink or left untouched. And sometimes the parent does say that, oh, you haven't eaten your breakfast, oh, you haven't done this. But Americans waste a lot of food, and I think that is, a lesson not to be learned in food influences from cinema. But of course, Harry Potter. Harry Potter is another one. Oh, those gorgeous feast scenes. I've watched the Harry Potter movies, all the movies, I think at least 15,000 times by now. And I just love the way all that food appears. But my thought is that, if the food is appearing out of thin air, does it actually have any sustenance? Is it actually, edible? Or does it sort of just disappear in your mouth? What happens to it? But I'm sure J.K. Rowling is a great foodie. You can make out by the way she has, she's sort of developed these things like butterbeer. Did you know there's actually a butterbeer recipe which is there online? I found it and I'm going to try making it. But you want to have that butterbeer. You want to have, the table groaning with food, and you're sitting with all your friends and you're eating that, and those candles are like hanging on top of your head and stuff like that. And of course, Hannibal Lecter. Yeah, I mean, he was a cannibal. But I remember one line from his movie. It took me a long time actually to watch Silence of the Lambs. I didn't watch it till I was 35 years old, even though Amit kept insisting you have to watch it. It's a great film, you must watch it. But the thought of this guy, a cannibal actually going out there and eating people I was like, I can't watch this. But I finally did watch it, and I admired that movie. I mean, Anthony Hopkins is an actor par excellence. But there's this one line he speaks about where he says the cheek is the most tasty part of the body. And when I eat a fish head, and the meat that is there near the gills, that is actually the most tasty, the softest, and the most succulent piece of meat in that whole fish. So if you're a fish eater, don't throw away that head. Try the meat from the cheeks of the fish. But talking about candles and food, if you notice my candle there on the table, candlelit dinners or candlelit meals were actually not inspired by romance so much as by a need to keep the insects away. If you light a candle when you're eating your lunch or dinner or whatever, you'll find that the flies and all actually disappear. Something about them makes all these flying insects go away. So next time you're feeling romantic, light that candle. But next time you're feeling hygienic and don't want to be interrupted by flies at your lunch table, then also light the candle, because the candle does work. Then, of course, there's food in television. Oh, yes, television has so much food. I mean, who can forget that Seinfeld episode with the soup restaurant, the soup cafe or whatever?
Soup
I mean,
Nazi.
soup what?
Soup Nazi.
Soup Nazi, yeah.
The character was called the Soup Nazi.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to open an eatery that only had soups. I love soup personally, and I've watched that episode a lot of times. Like, you know, what would I do different if I was running a soup kitchen? Not a soup kitchen, but like a soup kitchen. And I mean, it's amazing how inspiring, you know, watching something in front of you can be, how impactful it can be. And that big salad that, what's her name? The female character in Seinfeld? Elaine. That big salad that Elaine is always ordering. And ever since Seinfeld, Amit and I have always wanted to have a big salad at our table. And dinners are usually big salads, believe it or not.
Captain is saying one of the signature dishes in Singapore is the fish head curry. And it's quite a story behind it involving Chinese fishing merchants and the Indian immigrants of hundreds of years ago using the fish head.
Wow. You must tell us that story nicely someday, Captain, the fish head story. Anoop. Or maybe, you know, I'll research it or something of that sort and understand. But there's actually the story about, did I tell it on the last? No, I didn't. I don't think I did. Where there was this Bengali and a Punjabi traveling on a train. And the Bengali had this whole fish packed in his lunch. So the Punjabi sort of said, oh, fish, I also love fish. So the Bengali said, yes, fish is very good. So Punjabi said, but what about the head? I mean, why do you eat the head? So the Bengali said, well, actually, the head is where the brains of the fish are. So when you eat the head, you get more intelligent. And of course, the body of the fish is nutrition. So the Punjabi was like, okay, so will you sell me, you know, a portion of your fish? So the Bengali said, yeah, okay, so which portion do you want? The body will cost you 200 and the head will cost you 300. So the Punjabi said, the head will make me more intelligent. So Bengali said, yes. Punjabi said, okay, then I'll buy the head and here's 300 rupees. And he bought the head and he started eating it, and then he looked across at the Bengali who was sitting and eating the rest of the body, which was like twice the size of what he had. And he said, hey, hang on, I paid you 300 rupees, but this is less fish than what you've got. So the Bengali said, see, you ate the head, now you've become intelligent. So that's of course a very Bengali chauvinistic kind of story, but forgive. But that's a funny story. It's supposed to be funny. Please laugh. But going back to food and television, of course, Friends, everybody's watched Friends, and Friends is still running. I don't know how many, in what cycle they are in right now. But Friends, Monica churning out all those candies and their Thanksgiving dinners and Rachel's ineptitude and things like that. I mean, you want to sort of, you know, be together with your friends. You want to sort of, you know, have those potluck meals, and you want to, you know, sort of, you know, be maybe like Joey. And I actually have a friend who did that. You remember that scene where Joey and Rachel are like scraping that pie off the floor and eating it? So this friend of mine at a party, he was a little inebriated, and he spilled his spaghetti on the floor, and the host came and looked at it and saw it and said, hang on, I'll just go get the kitchen towels. He ran off to go get the kitchen towels. By the time he came back, the spaghetti had disappeared, because our friend, who was so loving that spaghetti, was like, he didn't want to wait, that it's gone off the plate, so what, it's still edible, and he ate it up. Okay, again, maybe not a nice story. But food has, I mean, all these various arts that are there, like for instance, pop fiction, popular fiction, especially the murder mysteries. I don't know what it is about murder mystery writers, but they're greatly into food. For instance, take John Grisham. Okay, he's lawyer, legal, but every time I read a John Grisham book, I mean, the only reason I really want to go to America is to go to the southern part of America, and eat those oily breakfasts those greasy breakfasts that he describes. I mean, I've like, yearned for that bacon and those eggs sort of dripping with grease and grits. I understand that grits is nothing more than what we here eat as dalia. But Grisham makes those grits sound so fantastic that every American I've met and I've said, I really want to eat grits. They like look at me like, is she crazy? She wants to eat grits. I mean, America has many more better foods. Why grits? But that's what Grisham does to you. He wants you to eat grits. And then there's this author who I really love, Sue Grafton. And I think they're going to make a TV series. She's no more, but I think her daughter is going to make a television series. She's famous for these alphabet novels, books. A is for alibi, B is for whatever. So she has alphabets, books, 26 books, I think 25. She passed before she could do Z. But in her books, there's this Hungarian lady called Rosie, and the main protagonist, she's always going to Rosie's cafe, and Rosie serves up all these Hungarian dishes, and of course Sue Grafton makes it sound sometimes comical, sometimes maybe not so appetizing or whatever, but the protagonist eats it and loves it. So after a while I was like, initially I thought, okay, these are like not serious sort of descriptions of food. But then I sort of went on to Google and I was like, let me type it and see what comes out. And they were actually these amazing Hungarian recipes, and I have tried a few of them. Goulash is one particular one. So again, I mean, just reading a book sort of, put me in the mood to have that food and to also experience what my heroine was experiencing and sort of be there in that moment and eat that food, and the whole, the excitement of it, that was so great. Again, Agatha Christie, great mystery writer, and she is so convincing that I will never eat fish paste ever in my life, because fish paste is invariably poisoned. Somebody is always poisoning somebody else using fish paste sandwiches or something like that. I think the book was called By the Pricking of My Thumb. But of course, she has good food as well, and Hercule Poirot is always, I mean, he's a gourmet, and he has his tisanes and his sweet sherries and things like that. So again, different characters have different settings for food, and they're all very evocative of the, is the word evocative or evocative? Of
in the movie, Anup is saying in the movie My Cousin Winnie.
My Cousin Winnie, yes.
There's a part where grits making is mentioned.
Yes. There is. But My Cousin Winnie, okay, what I remember of that movie is more the part about, I mean, Winnie himself and that actress, she was brilliant in it. Marissa Tomei, yeah. Then of course you have food in paintings. My favorite food painting is Dali's Bread. I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't, please check it out.
You have to mention Pineapple Sky because that's the only
I'm coming. So if you haven't seen Dali's painting of bread, you have to see it. You just want to reach into that canvas and grab that bread. It is so not just real, but so delicious the way he's portrayed it. I mean, it is probably the best looking bread I have ever seen. And, it's got just the right sheen and just the right kind of texture and everything like that. So you really just want to eat it. Of course, famous paintings like, I mean, still life is great in the classics and the Renaissance and the Impressionists also. I mean, Van Gogh, his Potato Eaters is a great painting, and you actually, feel like you want to live in that time, and that there's something about that painting which sort of makes you want to actually maybe boil a potato and eat it. There's something so rustic about potatoes, something so I mean, potatoes are delicious, but there's something, potatoes got a character, and it sort of lends itself to all sorts of situations. It's comfort food, it can be romantic food, it can be inspiring food, it can be junk food, it can be all sorts of things. Potatoes are great, and I think Van Gogh sort of hit it right in that painting of his. It's nice and dark, and you know, you've got all these people sitting around and eating their potatoes. Oh my God, good stuff. Then one thing that Amit just reminded me when we were talking about food and television, there's a series called Pie in the Sky. I have discussed it before. And of course, Pie in the Sky was my inspiration to my particular version of bread pudding. And if you want to know the secret to my recipe to bread pudding, please go watch it or watch Pie in the Sky, whichever one you prefer. But Pie in the Sky got Amit and me into having these fried egg sandwiches. And long before McDonald's started it, we were making fried egg sandwiches the way this particular gentleman, who's actually a police detective, and he wants to move out of being a police and start running a restaurant. So he sets up a restaurant, and at the end of the day, he's so tired that the only thing he can sort of make for himself is a fried egg sandwich. And it's the most delicious sandwich ever, with nice mustard, really good quality mustard, and some onions, and the fried egg. The fried egg, it's I call it an evil fried egg, and I'm going to show you how to do that evil fried egg one of these days. And so he puts that fried egg on top, and then, you know, sort of eats that with a little bit of mayo and or Tabasco or whatever thrown in. It is delicious. It's one of the best meals you can have, and talking about it, I want to have one right now. But
tell them that it's the only character who's a chef and also a detective.
yeah, Amit's just telling me to tell you that that's the only character who's a chef as well as a detective, and he's a very good chef. Then, of course, that brings me to the movie called Chef. I actually learned how to make a Cuban sandwich after watching that movie. What a great movie that was, and so much joy those guys get in that food, not cart, but that food van, whatever, driving from place to place. And this guy making those Cuban sandwiches. Cuban sandwiches are so yummy, I can't tell you, but you have to make them from scratch. And it's best if you're a pork eater to have a really good Cuban sandwich. You need to make that pork roast, that pulled pork at home, and then make your Cuban sandwich. And of course, if you can get those Cuban breads, if you can't, it's okay. You can sort of, you know, use a foot long or a bread like that, a longish bread like that. But it is really too good, and your fingers are like full of butter while you're eating it, because it's all been grilled in butter and cheese and ham and bacon, and you name it, it's in that. Then, of course, food photography. Food photography is an art that has become more and more, it's progressed more and more. I mean, some of the food photography, one of the things that I do when I'm doing a fast, especially, you know, things like Karwa Chauth and all, when you're not allowed to eat and you're not allowed to drink, I sit and go through these recipe books, those coffee table type recipe books, which have these amazing food photographs, and going through that, and, you know, page after page of these colorful, delicious looking food, it fills you up. It's literally like that story where Krishna ate one grain of rice and the whole universe was satiated. But going through a recipe book, especially a well printed, well photographed recipe book, there is no greater joy than that. And I mean, it gives you ideas, it inspires you, it excites you, it fills you with, you know, all sorts of feelings, and you want to sort of, you know, share that experience. So you call people, your loved ones, could be a husband, your daughter, your son, or your friend, or even your, you know, domestic worker, and, you know, show them that picture and say, see how beautiful this looks, maybe we should try making this. So food photography, and if you're into food photography, great, you know, you're really onto a good thing, because food photography is really you know, going places, especially with social media nowadays. I mean, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of them have so many great food photographs, and I think, you know, uh, people should get a lot of credit for doing that.
Somebody called Sujit Das. He's saying, hello, it's my first time here.
Hi Sujit, welcome to your first podcast.
Kemun
And Kemun acho? How do you know he's Bengali? Just because he's Sujit Das?
Yes.
Not necessary. Are you Bengali, Sujit? Then, of course, which brings me to food filming.
Balo achi.
Bhalo acho. Good. So, food photography progresses into food filming, and you have all thanks to YouTube and all these other food channels that are there. You have so much of food filming happening, and Amit and I try and do it in our kitchen when we're shooting for the Slow Fire Chef. But I mean, like if you watch Gusto TV, you know, those things dropping in, and it is so romantic, it is so beautiful, and you just want to sort of, you know, keep watching it. The music goes with it, and everything is sort of just happening there. It's like a foodgasm. And I mean, it looks so pretty, it looks so beautiful, you don't want to stop watching it. So, I mean, YouTube has really done wonders to the food filming that happens, because now everybody is trying, and some of them are doing really well. There's this South Indian channel, I don't know if you guys have watched it, they have like 1 million views and stuff like that, where these people live somewhere in the village, and the husband is shooting the wife, and she has this very rustic kitchen. They sort of live in the farmland somewhere, and she's got like an open kitchen. It's just walls and sort of thatched roof on top, and she's got a beautiful, neat, clean kitchen. I'll see if I can find a link to it. I shall, you know, put it below or share it with you guys. But there are some amazing food shows that are there on YouTube. Amit, do you remember the name of this? The Million? No? Okay. But it's really beautiful, that one, and it's got a lot of foreigners watching them, and that makes me so proud that, you know, they're watching a really good
Sujit is
Indian
watching
show.
us from Michigan. It's 9 a.m.
Who? Sujit. Hi, Sujit.
No,
Thank
he's
you.
Watching it from Michigan. You already said hi to him.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
And Ash is saying, I said, why don't you know, respond to any of the things? So she's saying, I'm a sincere student, pay full attention, no chit chat.
So that, I think, has done me my hour. And in case any of you have any questions or anything more to share, like Anup with the the fish head story from China, I am going to run away because I have somebody's dinner to cook, and I can't afford to be late. So, any questions?
No questions. Can you just tell Ash that she's a front bencher?
Ash, you're a front bencher. That's what Amit wants me to tell you. And of course, you know that he's a back bencher, and he has no time for front benchers. He thinks front benchers are teachers' pets.
So Sujit says that he always has his coffee brewed and with fresh beans. I said you are head chef's favorite.
Yeah, coffee needs to be brewed. You can't have instant coffee. And by the way, thanks for putting that earworm in my head. I've been humming it all day. Oh, Hazur, tumko.
That's Shubhajit Day.
Oh, that's Shubhajit Day. Okay, sorry. Shubhajit from Michigan. What do you do in Michigan?
Shubhajit Das is from Michigan. Shubhajit, I don't know.
Yeah,
where
okay,
he's from.
Shujit from
Shubhajit
Michigan.
Das, yeah.
Okay. Shujit Das from Michigan. Okay, so shall we say?
And Anup is saying that the fishermen are from Singapore and not from China. Saying the stories of Singapore fishermen and Indian immigrants.
Ah, okay. Okay. So the Indian immigrants are probably the ones who sort of taught these guys to eat the fish head, because Indians love fish head. In fact, when we were living in Indonesia, All the stuff that my mother used to, discard from the chicken or the fish or whatever, our cook, she would take them. She would ask permission from my mother and say, "Can I please have these?" And she would take them and then she would put them into this big pot and make a soup for themselves. And it was such a yummy soup, and whatever she found. And they used to even eat these insects. During the Bali time, when you switch on the lights and these flying insects come with those thin wings, not dragonflies, but they're small, about that size, and they fly around, and she used to catch them and then fry them crisp and eat them. And when I said, "Ew," she said, "Well, these are much more hygienic and they're cleaner than prawns, so don't say ew, taste it." I, of course, didn't. And so food habits are very strange all the world over. Oh, I wanted to tell you, talking about mystery writers and the use of food, I've used a lot of food in my book. And Anoop, you haven't read my book as yet. And
You have to show it properly. You're not showing it.
okay, here it is properly.
No, you have to show it properly.
Yeah, I'm showing it properly. So my protagonist is not a good cook. She barely manages to make a potato salad in the whole book.
Can
But
you show the back of the book? The story?
she's got a Bengali mother-in-law who's a fantastic cook. And the mother-in-law, of course, knows how to make chami kebabs and all sorts of wonderful things. So there is something about food that inspires writers and helps them create characters and character idiosyncrasies. Like what was his name? Karan what? No. That detective, that carrot chewing detective, Karamchand. Karamchand, yeah. I don't know who sort of figured that out as an idiosyncrasy for that detective, but it was a neat one, and a lot of people were chewing carrots in those days when that series came out. It was probably before a lot of your time, but okay.
Just tell Anu that he's a cat lover, and the book has a cat.
Yeah, Anoop, my book has a talking cat, so since you're a cat lover, you might appreciate it. And my cat is called Macavity. Mac. After that famous poem, Macavity, the Mystery Cat.
Can you read out that?
Read out the poem?
Yeah.
No, I don't have
Macavity.
the poem in my hand. I don't remember these poems like that. Okay, so bye-bye.
All right.
Thank you so much, and remember, Mumbaikars, if you want to be part of our menu posting WhatsApps, then please send us, private message us your details, and we shall add you on. Bye bye.